Mark Rogers TV back with you to talk bowl action, but instead of just doing the typical bowl preview, we of course are going to be inundated after the bowl season with comparisons between the conferences. And most of those comparisons are simply going to be that this conference won the national championship or that this conference went 7-2 and that conference went 3-5. But we need to put it into context in regards to how difficult the competition is for each conference. So in the next 5 videos, what we're going to do is look at each conference's opponents in the bowl games to try to determine who has the toughest bowl schedule. Let's start with the Big Ten, which I believe to have a very difficult schedule most years because, number one, the Big Ten, along with the SEC, look through history of the BCS, has played in the most BCS bowls. So, if you play in more BCS bowls, you're playing better competition, and your teams are slotting up, meaning that you're playing more difficult teams with your lesser teams in the other bowl games because you've slotted 2 instead of 1 into BCS play. Also, number 2 for the Big Ten is that they've been slotted in playing 3 contractual games with the SEC. The SEC's been the best conference, therefore difficult games against 3 of the best teams out of the SEC. But let's look at this season, and let's start with the Big Ten. And again, in future videos, we'll check out the other Power 5 conferences. So what we've done here is we've taken the Big Ten and all its opponents in 10 bowl games. And we have ranked these teams based on record, conference record, record against Power 5 teams, record against currently ranked teams, also that team's record against bowl teams, and that team's point differential. So how many points have they scored versus given up this season, not against the Western Carolinas and the Chattanoogas and the MAC teams and the Sun Belt teams, but against Power 5 teams. And then finally, that team's Power 5 schedules record. So all the teams, for example, this first team is Alabama, the number 1 ranked team in the country. Alabama, for example, is 12-1, 8-1 in the SEC, 9-1 against the Power 5. They are 4-1 against currently ranked teams. They are 9-1 against bowl teams. They have a point differential of 151 on the positive side against Power 5 conference teams. And their opponents' record, that's just Power 5. Don't include the 3 teams that they played out of conference, out of the Power 5. But their Power 5 opponents are 77-43. So we did this with all the teams that the Big Ten teams are facing. Number 1, Alabama. Number 5, Baylor. Number 16, Missouri. Number 19, Auburn. Number 24, USC. So the Big Ten is playing 5 ranked teams. They're also playing Tennessee, Boston College, Stanford, North Carolina, and Louisiana Tech. So they're playing 9 of the 10 bowl games against Power 5 conference teams. And again, 5 ranked teams. And the average of those rankings that the Big Ten is playing is 13. So I took that by going 1, 5, 16, 19, and 24 for Bama, Baylor, Missouri, Auburn, and USC, then dividing that out. So the lower the number here, the better, or the more difficult. So the Big Ten is playing an average ranked team that's 13th. So if you take all these numbers, let's look at a few things that stand out to me. Obviously, Alabama and Baylor have been dominant in their games. Their point differential against the Power 5 is plus 151 and plus 145. The rest of these teams are around even. USC is actually a plus 103 and plays a very difficult schedule. If you look at USC's schedule, all but 1 game was against a Power 5 opponent. Fresno State was the only non-Power 5, and Fresno State played for the Mountain West title. Also, again, the point differentials here would be what you would expect. It comes out to a plus 317. Let's keep also in mind that the record, again, of all these teams that the Big Ten is playing is 83-30. Their conference record, 56-29. Now, all of those conference records are against Power 5, except Louisiana Tech, 7-1. So that's 49-28 against their conference. So we're going to be looking at that as we compare the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12. Their Power 5 conference record, again, this is the Big Ten's bowl opponents, and their record against the Power 5 is 53-35. Their record against currently ranked teams. So that's a difficult one to take, because some people like to look at what the ranking was at the time of the game, and that's certainly valid for certain reasons, but I think that the ranking currently is a little bit more valid. You can use a number of examples. Maybe Oklahoma would be the best team. They were number 4 at one point in the season to start the year. Then they have dropped ever since, and now they're unranked at 8-4. But against ranked teams, these opponents are 14-22. Against bowl opponents, against bowl teams, the Big Ten's opponents are 44-37. And again, their Power 5 record of all these teams that the Big Ten bowl opponents have faced are 601 and 417. That's a plus 184. So we don't have anything to compare this to right now. These are just numbers. But once we look at the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the SEC, then we'll be able to compare these numbers against their opponents. So that's what we have right now. Let's see if anything else stands out. I think USC is a very strong 7-4 against the Power 5. Of course, the Trojans take on Nebraska. Against ranked teams, Tennessee went 0-5. Most of that was in the SEC. Actually, with Oklahoma dropping out of the rankings, all of that was against the SEC. But it points to Tennessee's strength of schedule that they played 5 ranked teams. Auburn played 6, and they went 4-2. So Auburn's very difficult. Missouri was 6-2 against current bowl teams. Of course, Alabama's numbers are all going to be strong as they take on Ohio State. Let's keep in mind that Louisiana Tech took on 5 bowl teams. They went 2-3, pretty respectable. They were 0-2 against Power 5 conference teams, so that included Auburn as well in that mix for Louisiana Tech. And actually, the 2 out-of-conference games that Louisiana Tech played against Power 5 teams, those teams went 16-8, so they played 2 strong teams. Boston College going 4-4 in the ACC, 5-4 against Power 5 teams, 1-3 against ranked teams. So they did rather well considering they're just a 7-5 football team. Baylor 2-0 against ranked teams. Of course, that would be right now Kansas State, and also against TCU, that huge win. While Mizzou is only 0-2, despite getting to the SEC championship game. 0-2 against ranked teams. That would be, of course, Alabama and Georgia. So again, those are the numbers. They don't mean a whole lot right now until we get to the point where we can compare these against the other Power 5 conferences. So we would love for you to chime in. And again, what we're doing here is we're taking the bowl opponents of each conference to see how difficult the bowl schedule is for each conference. Would love to hear your feedback right here on Mark Rogers TV.